because obviously I worked on Sanditon. Yes. 2 episodes of that across the 3 series. I could not have written Miss Austen if I hadn't worked with Justin on Sanditon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation with me, Caroline Jane Knight. I am the last of Jane's nieces from Chawton House, as I think you probably all know by now. But I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Andrea Gibb, who is the screenwriter for Miss Austen, which is obviously being shown around the world, due to be released in the US this weekend, actually, by the time this goes out. So very exciting. I have seen it. And welcome, Andrea, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for asking me.
And as I was sort of saying when we were chatting before, this is quite a sort of, slightly unusual one for me because, of course, this series is actually depicting my family, which is absolutely amazing. It is. Of course, it's amazing. And it's wonderful to see Jane's story, brought to life on screen in this way, because I think before, while bits of it have sort of been done, I've never sort of felt before that really kind of that story of Jane as a writer has been told before, and it's wonderful to see it. But at the same time, of course, a little bit of me, it's a bit weird seeing, of course, your family being played out. But I think, overall, as I said, I think it was absolutely wonderful. So how did it come about? That's where a good place to start is, how did it come about that you are the screenwriter of Miss Austen?
I've written all 4 episodes. I've basically taken Gill Hornby's book, Miss Austen, and I've adapted it for the screen. That's kind of what I've done. That's exactly what I've done, in fact.
How did you end up with the gig, as it were?
Well, what happened was there's the company is called Bonnie Productions, and it's owned by this amazing producer called Christine Langan. And Christine, she's got an astonishing track record in the industry, in the film and TV industry. She used to be head of BBC Film, in fact. And then she's kind of branched out now on her own. She's gone back into producing as opposed to commissioning. And she was setting up her own company, and she was looking, as new companies do, for material. And she was sent the manuscript of Miss Austen. So before it was published, she got a first look at it. And I had worked with Christine before. We did Swallows and Amazons together, the film version, back in 2016. And she got in touch with me. I had another. We have another film project together, so we were sort of working together anyway. And she phoned me up and she said, "Do you want to read this amazing book about Jane Austen?" And I was like, "Yes," because obviously, I had read Jane Austen when I did at university and school and all of that, but I literally hadn't really thought about her very much since then. She wasn't, because I do a lot of book adaptations, but I hadn't really been sent anything in the Regency or the Georgian period until I did 2 episodes of Sanditon for ITV and Masterpiece. So I dipped my
Sanditon series. Sorry, just to interrupt.
I did Sanditon 1.
Yep.
I did episode 5 in Sanditon 1, the cricket episode. Yep. And then I did an episode in Sanditon 3.
Yep.
Excellent. So I dipped my toe in it with Sanditon, and I'd got a little taste for it, but I hadn't really ever thought that anyone would give me something like that, because that's not kind of the stuff that I normally get sent. Anyway, Christine said, "Have a read, see what you think." And I read it and I thought it was fantastic. It's a fantastic book. If any of your listeners haven't read it, read it. It's great. And it's different to the TV series, but it sits beside it. I mean, there's so much of it. I hope I've caught the essence, and I've been very faithful and true to her book, and I hope she would say that. But then, because you're adapting for screen, there are changes you have to make. You have to adapt it. That's the whole point of the process, because a book is one thing and a screen story is something different. So part of the process of adapting is taking the beauty of the book and hoping you preserve that, but also making it dramatic in a way that TV viewers want. They love a bit of drama and jeopardy and hooks at the end of episodes and things like that. So there's work to be done when you adapt. But I was very lucky with this in that I was working with this amazing source material. So I read it and I thought, oh, this is fantastic. And I didn't know anything about Cassandra burning the letters. I didn't know that part of the story. That was new to me. I knew about the novels, but I didn't know about her having to struggle so hard to write. I didn't know about her poverty, about the fact that they lived a lot in very reduced circumstances. So this information in Gill's book, and Gill is steeped in Austen. She lives in Kimpbury. And therefore I think Jane Austen is in Gill's DNA, like it is in yours, like she is in yours. So I was just kind of completely, just fascinated by all this information that is in Gill's book. So I got back to Christine and I said, I would really love to do this. So she optioned it, and she went to Gill's agent, did the book deal. And then her and I started to think about how we could put it onto the screen. So we worked very closely together. And we thought about it needed to be 4 episodes because that made sense in terms of the story. We knew that the main story was going to be about the letters and how to find Cassandra finding the letters and making what she discovered in the letters. The letters have obviously been created by Gill. I mean, because there's none of them,
of course. Yes, of course.
They don't exist. So those are fictional.
Yeah, of course.
But she has written them so beautifully and so in the style of Jane Austen, as I would imagine it, that sometimes it's very hard to not think that Jane actually wrote them. I mean, that's what I was thinking when I was reading it. I was like, are these real? Couldn't quite get my head around it. And obviously we had to change some of them also for the TV series because we had to make them fit to picture, etc., etc. But it was a fantastic starting point. And so Christine and I worked on it, and we knew that we needed to have the mystery of the letters driving the main plot, if you like, the main story. But then how do we bring Jane into it herself, And so then it was decided that we would have 2 timelines. And the reason for doing that was because we made the decision that we needed to show their bond and how important Cassie was to Jane and Jane to Cassie in their youth, and what role Cassandra / Cassie played in Jane's life, and how she was so instrumental in Jane's career, in Jane's writing, in Jane's personal life, in everything. And we chose to show their bond and show them as 2 sisters and how close they were in the past, so that we could shine some light on her motivation for burning the letters, which again is speculation on both Jane and both Gill and our part. Who knows why? So historians, literary, sort of commentators, Gill Hornby, we can only speculate. But in looking at the way Gill has created their bond in the past, the way we did for the screen, you can sort of start to build up a picture about why she might have done it. So that was the reason why we chose to do 2 timelines. And also we felt we couldn't just have Jane's letters and not show Jane. I mean, it was just like, you couldn't do that. So we had to work out how to structure it. So that took that was a lot of work. We worked on that for a couple of years. And I had a fantastic script editor that Christine brought me called Tom Main, and he was really helpful. So I would come up with, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. He would read it and he would go, yeah, that's great. Or I don't think this quite works.
Yes.
Or why have you thought about? So I had this wonderful sounding board in him and also in Christine. And Masterpiece, PBS America. Yeah. We decided that we needed to find a home to finance the scripts, if you like, at that stage, and also to have a broadcaster on our side. And we made the decision to approach Suzanne at Masterpiece. And part of that is also because of what they show on their channel. And we felt we would really sit in their channel really well. And also because Suzanne has an amazing passion for these kinds of stories. Suzanne is in charge at Masterpiece. She's head of development, and she wanted to build it, to develop from the ground up rather than acquire. So we went to her, and she was amazing. She came in really early on and said, "Yeah, here, let's do a script. Let's see where we are." So she took a punt on us. She kept the faith, and then after we had one script, she was like, "Right, let's have another." And so gradually, we had like 2-3 scripts. And then when we had 3 coming up to 4, we were like, "Oh, I think we might have a show here." Kind of getting really, could we? Do we think? And Gill was wonderful. So if we had questions, we could send her an email, or, what we're thinking this, could you just clarify this? So she was always really helpful as well. Although she very much let me get on with it. She never interfered. She never, she gave me some lovely notes on language sometimes where I'd maybe been a bit modern.
Yeah.
And she helped me with that. And so everyone was just, I think we were all just so excited to be doing it and felt so passionate about the material that it just felt kind of effortless. I don't always say that about jobs, I have to say, and that's not to say it wasn't challenging or difficult at times, because it absolutely was. But in terms of the people that were around me giving me support, it was really amazing. And I
can see how much you've enjoyed it. Do you know what I mean? It's coming.
Yeah, I loved it. And then we got to the point where we needed a director. So I had worked with Aisling Walsh on Elizabeth is Missing, which also went on PBS, which had Glenda Jackson play the lead. And she's an astonishing director. And she's one of those directors, I think, as a writer, if you find a director who just gets you, who shares your sensibility, who understands your work and understands not just the dialogue or the action, but also understands the silences and the moments where you don't want anything apart from stillness, which I do write that stuff in. She gets that. And we're just kind of in each other's heads. So Christine and I approached her and said, "Look, we've got this project. Are you interested?" She read a few of the scripts, and she was just like, "Yeah, I really want to do this." So then we had her, and then Christine brought on Stella Mers, who's a producer because Christine was going to exec it because she had other things going on. So she was over it, but she needed someone in the space on set, to do the nuts and bolts of the production, and also to be creative and to give us a feedback on the script. Stella's very clever, very bright. So suddenly we had this team of women. I mean, apart from Tom, and he became an honorary woman. We had this team, and it was, gosh, this is great. I think we might have something here. And then the BBC came on board. They acquired it, and Federation, who became they're going to sell it. They're responsible for the sales worldwide. And suddenly we were like, "Oh, right, let's try and cast it then." But even then, we still didn't know it was going to happen. Even then, this happens with TV. You don't know.
Last minute, isn't it? Until it actually
last minute,
it can fall apart at any moment.
Any minute,
Absolutely.
You can drop it. Yeah. Money can drop out. Yeah. You don't know, and until you get the cast, and you know that the broadcaster is going to be happy with those actors, you're not 100% sure.
Yeah. And obviously,
sorry, go on. No,
I was just going to say, obviously, working with material like this, there's also some, there's some specific challenges, potentially responsibility of bringing Jane Austen to life. You have got an ardent, worldwide group of people who love Jane Austen, who all have their own ideas, don't they, of who she was. And was that something that you thought about, if you know what I mean? Was that something that sort of... Yes,
it was paramount. That was paramount in many ways. Not that, the truth is, and I don't want to upset any of your listeners, you are never going to please everybody. That's a fact. When you take a classic or a much loved author or a revered piece of fiction and you change it from the book, a reader's relationship with a book is that you run the film in your own head. So you create the characters, you make the pictures, you know what they look like, you know how they sound, because it's your immediate one-to-one with the novel or with the book or with your idea of who she is or what have you. So we are making something that is really our interpretation, our idea of that, our presentation of that. And in all honesty, you are never going to please everybody. But having said that, you are totally and utterly responsible for the way that you present that character. And you have a duty to the character, we have a duty to Jane, we have a duty to Cassandra. We have a responsibility, and you cannot run roughshod over that. You cannot go, oh, I don't care. I'm just gonna do what I want because this is what I think. That's not right. That's never gonna happen. And if I'd wanted to create my own story about Jane, fictionalized, I could have gone off and done that by myself. So I had a responsibility to Gill's book. I had a responsibility to Jane and her history and her amazing genius. I had a responsibility to Cassandra. And that was part of the reason, I think, why we were all so drawn to this project, was because she's been vilified. Cassandra's been vilified for doing this act of literary vandalism by stopping and robbing people of knowledge of Jane's life. And so she's had a pretty hard press as Cassandra. And so I think also in our hearts and in Gill's, I think this is very much at the heart of Gill's book, is who was this woman, this sister, who had tragedy in her life, who was dutiful and who loved her sister beyond all others, and her brothers and her mother and father, who was family orientated, very much family orientated, and who wanted to preserve her sister's legacy, which is what you get from the book. So I think Gill set out to redeem her, to say to her readers, have another think about this. Have a think about why she might have done it. Look at her. This is a woman, not a made up kind of a person with no thoughts and hopes and dreams and all of those things. So Gill's created this very three-dimensional character in Cassandra and given her a motivation. And I think very much the drive for all of us was, let's do that. Let's put Cassandra on screen, because she doesn't usually get forefronted. She doesn't.
No, absolutely.
It's all about Jane.
Absolutely. And I think it's only actually been in relatively recent times that I think an awful lot of people have actually understood that Cassandra was such a good artist.
Yeah.
I mean, Jane's writing is so dominant, isn't it?
Exactly.
That absolutely, that the rest of the siblings are players in her story, aren't they?
They are, but she never, ever, Jane never criticised her brothers, ever. As far as my research tells me, I could be wrong about that. You'll correct me if that's the case. She was as loyal as Cassandra was, and she had this astonishing bond with her niece Fanny, and with Anna and the other niece, and her mum and her dad, and all of that. And so you get this. I think from reading Gill's books, they really start to come alive. And the other thing that we loved about the book was the way that Gill uses Jane's own writing to reveal that she was basically writing members of her family in her books. That's
absolutely.
Yeah. And so we loved all that.
And that's actually, and I think, I mean, I'm not necessarily, I'll go too deeply, but I actually think that's also true of our shared ancestors. And when you actually start to understand the people that Jane was surrounded with in her wider life, and there is so much connection between her life and what is in her books.
And what's in her books. I think that's absolutely
because as she was clearly, as by her own admission, she wrote about what she knew, didn't she? So of course. And of course.
Well, I think we all do that. I mean, really, I think there's something quite vampiric about writers, and a bit. If I ever write anything that my family my mother is in everything. I mean, everything I write, even though she's not in everything, because you know what I mean. And I just
somewhere.
Yes, and I'll read something back and I'll go, "Oh my God, I put my mother in again," and it's a completely subconscious thing. So Jane was drawing on all the things that were happening around her, all the people that she loved, all the people who irritated her, because she was waspish as well, as we can see by the letters that remain. She was an amazing social satirist, which is the other thing about her books that I think get overlooked. And they're not just romantic
absolutely
novels.
Absolutely.
They're historical documents of a time.
Yes.
And so you take on Jane Austen and you are taking on a huge thing, and you think, oh God, well, I'll just have to go with what I believe and what I hope and what I feel is true to her, and hope that comes across, and that I think
really that's all you can do, isn't it? Yeah. As you said, the millions and millions of people around the world who love Jane Austen, who have their own image of what she is, trying to please them is a futile task. You can't. And you can't just run from one person's idea to another. And I think you're absolutely right that actually you've got to be true to Jane, ultimately. You've got to be true to Jane and Cassandra, and as you say, Gill's book. And that's
all you can do. That's your part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, for me, which has been really very interesting, is how can you compare as a writer to someone like Jane? You're going to not necessarily, you're not going to come out of that particularly well every time, are you? It's like, oh, it's good, but it's not Jane Austen.
Well, I have to say, it's why I've never written fiction, and I wouldn't dare. How could I possibly write fiction? Because everyone is immediately going to, I mean, that's the first comparison that's going to be made. And
well, it is, yes, she's an Austen, but yes.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's something that you just take on and you accept, and you hope that you have at least given a good show of yourself. That's all you can hope for, really.
So as well as the challenges,
I have to say, for your viewers, we did get fantastic reviews. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been very well received. It's been very, very well received. And so as well as that, as I said, not the challenge, but that you have taken on one of the biggest literary legacies of all time. And
yes, I have.
And you're a brave woman, and bravo for you for doing it.
There's also my folly, I suspect.
and we've touched on it already.
Who can I do next? That's what I'm doing.
Exactly. Where do you go from there?
I'm on a roll. I don't. Who's ever going to match up to that? I don't know. Probably.
Absolutely. But you've also, of course, got the challenge, which you would do with any story like this, of this isn't a documentary. It's a television series. And it has to be watchable to a general audience. It's not, you're not, and let's be honest, you're not playing to a small amount of Austen aficionados who may want things extremely accurate. You're making a television series for an audience, aren't you?
Yes. Yes, you are.
Of course, it has to have story arcs, and you need different characters, and you need a bit of tension, and you need those sorts of things in a story like that. But it inevitably means that you're making decisions, aren't you? You're making decisions, and I have to say, and one of the ones that people, that a couple of people have sort of talked about and wanted me to ask you about, was the absence of Martha Lloyd in this story. So I just wanted to ask you, as I said, with the total understanding that you have to make decisions, it would just be interesting to know what's behind.
I think there are a lot of characters in the book, in her life. Most of them are called either Elizabeth or Mary, so that's quite problematic from a television point of view. You're like, oh my goodness, we're going to have to differentiate them somehow.
Yeah.
And I do know that, particularly with episode 1, we are introducing a lot of new characters very quickly. And I think the reason for omitting Martha, and I do apologize to her memory for that, because I know how important she was to Jane and to Cassandra. The reason for doing that was because we concentrated on Eliza and Mary Austen as the two other sisters. And we felt that to bring in a third, to bring Martha in would dissipate and would maybe kind of, wouldn't make their importance in Jane and Cassandra's story. It would diffuse it. So we thought about that really long and hard and thought, we've got two. We've got Eliza, who Jane writes to all the time.
Yep.
And obviously she was a Lloyd. And we've got Mary Austen, who is incredibly important in terms of the conflict.
Yes.
If you like that.
Yes.
That's all I'll say. She brings the conflict and the tensions. And I think that then Martha would have, to add Martha into that mix would have diffused possibly the importance of those two Lloyd sisters, and also would have taken away probably from the importance of the bond between Cassie and Jane in the past. And I think we made the decision to show how dependent they were on one another. And so to bring in Martha to, because Martha lived with them, didn't she? And all of that, then it was a decision. And I hope that people don't feel that we've been unfair to Martha, because obviously her story still exists, but it just doesn't exist in this particular space. I mean, other characters got left out, not just Martha,
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, it is actually a big cast, though, isn't it? If you want everybody.
Huge. And we've got, you've got Martha and you've got Eliza, you've got Mary, who are the two. And when we saw, although Eliza is just in the past, obviously, because she dies,
yes,
but we did have to show Mary Austen in both timelines. And we would have had to have done that with Martha as well, from, youth to, because she was important at Chawton. So it was a decision. It was a decision that we took for that reason.
But I can understand what you're saying. I can understand what you're saying, because you say you've already got two timelines. Yeah. So there's already. That's not confusing. The way you've done it isn't confusing, but I'm saying that there is already two actresses, isn't there, for each part?
Two actresses. Yeah, exactly.
So I can understand what you're saying. I don't want to use, I hope this, again, I'm treading carefully because I don't want to.
No, don't worry.
But I don't want to, as I said, like you, I don't want to be disrespectful to Martha's memory and her role.
No, and her role in it, exactly.
Jane writing. But I can understand what you're saying is that, and the word that's coming to mind is clutter, but I don't kind of mean that rudely.
Yeah, I think
that somehow I can understand what you're saying, that it would.
I think if you're choosing to put characters on screen, no matter how minor they are, even the characters who have one line, 2 scenes, 3 scenes, every single character that you put on screen has to have a point, has to have a function,
and a role in that,
and has to add to the central story,
yes,
or take away from it, depending on the relationship. And Mary gave us that in spades. I mean, Mary Austen is a fantastic character, and she's beautifully played in our show by 2 amazing actresses. And I think that was a very important decision. Now, Martha was a benign force in their lives. She was totally not like Mary Austen.
Yeah,
she didn't bring conflict. She didn't bring tension. But we already had Eliza, who was giving us the friendship that Jane had chosen to write the bulk of the letters in Gill's book too. Yeah. So it was a difficult decision, but we felt in the end that we had to make sure that the other characters had a function, had an arc. Each of them had an arc, and that we could see the relationship between them with the 2 central characters, who were Jane and Cassie. So yes, difficult decision, but one that we took. And you have to stand by these decisions. You have to say, this was for the purpose of the storytelling.
Yes. And as there is a difference, we've got a difference here, of course, haven't we, between actually the historical fact in Gill's book.
Yes.
Done. And obviously I know Gill, she's an ambassador for the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation.
Right. Oh, she's amazing.
She's amazing. And what I think is so amazing about Gill's books is that it is that blend of actually historical accuracy. I mean, she researches her as a
100%.
fiction writer.
Yeah.
She's not a fiction writer. She's somebody who takes the real facts but crafts them into a story, into a narrative.
Of course.
Because
she does.
Which I think makes it so wonderfully accessible to people, because it is easy for a lot of people to read a story, isn't it, than to just sort of look at facts. So I think it's, she's magic in doing that. And then of course you've got the transition between, as you said, a novel is different from a screen. From screen is different. So I think I certainly hope that everybody understands that.
I hope they do too. I mean,
documentary. It's a drama.
It's not, and also you have to fictionalize certain things because nobody really, even, Jill speculating, fictionalizing whatever in her book. You have to fictionalize the moments when the characters are together in a scene, because really we don't know what they said to one another. We've no idea if that's how they spoke. We know obviously we know that's how they spoke because we've got the letters, so we can glean information from the letters as to attitudes and points of view and all of that kind of stuff. But when you're in a room with two characters and you are having to write an important scene that is moving the story on in some form or other, you have not much idea as to what actually probably went on. And all you can use is your instincts about the characters that you've already started to create as a writer, and also how their story progresses. So where we're going. I mean, we knew where we were going with Jane's story. Inevitably, there was an ending. We had that's historically true. And so we knew that's where we were going. We knew that was our end game. And what we had to do was put her in scenes that led us to that final destination. And the same with Cassandra, that we had to lead her through the revelations in the letters that took her to the final act.
Yes.
So you have this, it's what we call arcs, character arcs. You start them at point A, you take them through a series of events or circumstances or encounters or tragedies or conflicts or happy or triumphs, and you bring them out at point B. So that's what you have to do. And a lot of that is kind of fictionalized because you don't know. You're not in the room. You don't know. But what you do have is your clues. And you're like a detective, really. You've got your clues and your points. You know their point of view and you know where you're going. So you know that Jane couldn't suddenly decide she was leaving Chawton forever and never coming back because that's never going to happen.
Yes.
So
yes,
it is like being a detective in some ways, about making sure that you're not leading people up the garden path in the wrong way, but at the same time you're creating three-dimensional characters with wants and needs and hopes and dreams and flaws. Actually, flaws, very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. Absolutely. And it's very, and actually I think, again, in just sort of in preparation for talking to you and talking to a couple of people, that was something that also came through is the fact that it's very easy for some reason to sort of picture Jane's life as being idyllic in some way. And actually there was a lot going on. There was they were under a lot of pressures, a lot of things happened in their life. And I think that it certainly brought that home to people. I think it certainly brought home to people that there was a lot more, as you said, they had destitute circumstances at times and were in difficulty. But talking about Jane herself, so Patsy Ferran, I have to say, she, and obviously the combination of the writing and her, for me personally, that is the most believable portrayal of Jane Austen I've ever seen.
That's fantastic to hear.
It's the most believable I've ever seen. There was, of course, again, we've all got such strong ideas.
Yes.
There were bits where I sort of thought that's not how my imagination works.
Yes, of course.
But she, honestly, to me, was the best version of Jane that I was believable. I was sucked in. I could go with it completely and believe it. And as I've sort of been, thinking about, and when I think about Jane, Patsy's popping into my mind from time to time.
That's great.
I am brilliant. I am making that connection. I am. And that's kind of, for me personally, that's never happened before quite so tightly. And I actually, 2 days ago, I just cheekily put on my Facebook a picture of her and just said to my community, what do we think? Did she do a great job? And I have to say, overwhelmingly, again, anybody, but you wouldn't expect it.
No, you couldn't. No,
you would,
of course,
it.
And she's an icon,
absolutely. But the sentiment of, yes, that was. I mean, for the most people,
yeah, that's fantastic to hear. She'll be thrilled with that.
Yeah, that would, actually, yeah, she was the closest that we've seen, actually, to someone that you can go, yeah, actually, I can completely buy into that being Jane.
I think Patsy is a phenomenal actress. I'll say that. Totally phenomenal.
Yes. Yeah.
She is one of those actors who just, and this is an interesting, from my point of view, is, you craft a line, you spend a long time thinking, right, what's the rhythm, of this. You don't just kind of, particularly with something like Austen, because you've got to really think about the rhythms in the lines. And, I mean, Jill does it beautifully in her book. And I had to really think about the rhythms and each line and all of that. Patsy takes quite, it's not easy to sometimes say that kind of dialogue, and make it feel real and believable and completely as if it's coming from the inside. She starts at the beginning of the line and she pushes through to the end, and you get the entire meaning. And it feels like she's thinking it up on the spot. She's got an astonishing ability to understand how it works, how thoughts and words join together. It's a very, the really best actors can really do that, where the words become synonymous with the thought and with the action, and you do not even notice the join. And she's got that ability. She also has, she's just really intelligent, and you can tell that she's clever and she's quick, and she also gives space to the other actors in the scene. So there was never I'm Jane Austen. It was always about the other, how she fitted in to the scenes with the other characters, and how she expressed herself to them and for them and about them. So that's why and Sinova's the same. She's who plays the young Cassie, also brilliant. So the two of them together have this wonderful kind of chemistry that isn't forced, just happens. So I think we were very lucky in our cast, and that comes from Keely, Hawes,
yes,
right the way down. And a lot of that is down to, we had a casting director called Jill Trevelick, who read the scripts, thought about the actors that she knows and loves, and then made us lists for each single character of who might be best. And then Aisling is the kind of director that actors really want to work with. I mean, they love working with Aisling. She's an actor's director. So you those two things, the combination of that, meant that we had access to the most fantastic cast. And one by one, we'd get a phone call from Jill to say, oh, so-and-so's going to do it. And you'd be like, really? I really they want to do it. And you'd be like, yeah, they're really going to do it. And then this next one would come in. And even down to the characters, the actors who have one scene or two scenes, they are cast to perfection. And I think as a writer, you make up this stuff in your room, and you don't get out of your jammies very often, when you're on a deadline, and you eat a lot of biscuits and drink a lot of tea, and you bang your head off a lot of walls going, oh my God, this is rubbish. And the characters are in your head, they're living in the way that readers And books, my characters are living in, I used to be an actor, so I speak them out loud, and I'm almost kind of possessed. And then you start to see the casting tapes, and you look at actors interpreting it, and you think, oh my God, did I really write that? Oh no, that can't, they must have made that up. Or that's exactly what I pictured in my head. And that doesn't, those moments are really magical for someone like me, because from being on your own or having your lovely development team, suddenly the tentacles are going further and further out, and suddenly there's other people interpreting it, and it is no longer yours. It is all of ours. And that's what I think the difference is between books and TV. You cannot make a TV show on your own.
No,
cannot do it.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely not.
And I had a sort of similar experience, I have to say, with my own book. I mean, it's not television at all, but with my own book, because I wrote Jane and Me, My Austen Heritage, about growing up.
Okay, fantastic. I must get a copy of that.
I will send you one, absolutely.
Please do. I love that.
I will do. But that's my story of growing up at Chawton House and what sort of happened since, and what.
So you grew up in the big house?
Yes, in the big house.
Okay, fantastic.
The first 18 years of my life in that big house when it was
wow.
home. So of course I've got a unique insight, I suppose, into that house when it was still the family home of the Austen Knight family.
Because Mary Austen had a daughter called Caroline.
Yes, that's what I'm named after. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
Absolutely. But so I actually had the audiobook of my book, Isn't Me. The audiobook of my memoir is actually done by Alison Larkin, actress who's now become the top-selling Austen audiobook narrator in the world. She's selling. And she did my book. And the first time I heard that recording, and because she's an actress, she doesn't just read it. She's different characters in it. She's properly... It just blew my mind. I mean, it just, as you said, just hearing your work sort of elevated like that. And I had exactly that. I sat next door listening to the first chapter, literally thinking, did I write this? It actually sounds like a book.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It sounds like a thing.
It's a fantastic experience, isn't it, when that happens?
It is.
When everything comes together and you think, oh my goodness. And I actually, in the reviews that we've had, universally, the cast have all been praised. All of them, the ensemble have, the casting. So Gill has done a marvelous job. And also, we were lucky with Aisling because actors just I'll work with her. She's amazing.
And I have to say, now you're saying it and I'm thinking it through, there were not that you would expect there to be, but there was no weak. There was no 1 week in that cast. There's no
one single
actor. Everybody was.
I mean, I think about the actress Florence Bell, who plays Mary Jane, who plays one of Isabella's sisters.
Yes.
And she's not got that much. She's got a few scenes. She's fantastic. She's astonishing, and the vicar Thomas Coombs, who plays Dundas.
Yes,
and you just go, that's amazing. And it's with very little, they just create entire characters that you kind of look at them and you think, oh, I wonder, what did he have for breakfast? Or, oh, I bet he's really difficult at home. Or because the character has completely been created by these astonishing actors. So I think all of us would say, all four of us, Christine, me, Aisling and Stella, how lucky.
And I have to say, it's actually really lovely to hear how wonderful it was to make. I think that's just...
Yeah, it was. That's not to say it wasn't challenging, No,
and hard work.
And schedules and... thinking about how we might need to change certain things in order to get this, to make this day or do, there's always production challenges. But I think the team just was so bonded, and that includes the crew, from the heads of departments through to the people working in each and every one of those departments. Everyone just seemed to pull together and go, right, because it was tight, we did it.
Yes.
We shot it in 10 weeks. So, and period.
Incredible how quickly things are made nowadays. It really is. It was the same with Sanditon. because actually on the release of Sanditon, I interviewed Justin.
Oh, Justin is fantastic.
And then actually he came and visited Chawton, and I showed.
Oh, did he?
Because he'd written Sanditon in the pandemic, hadn't he?
Yeah, he had.
Room. So he'd never been to Chawton. He wasn't allowed.
No.
So yes.
Yeah. He also, I would say about Justin, because obviously I worked on Sanditon, 2 episodes of that across the 3 series. I could not have written Miss Austen if I hadn't worked with Justin on Sanditon, because he really helped me understand about the sort of the rhythms and the nuances of the dialogue, and all how that all that kind of thing, and about the tropes actually, the Austen tropes. And Sanditon, I think, was a huge undertaking and challenge. And without Justin, I don't think it would have been. I don't think it would have happened. No, exactly.
Absolutely. And actually, Sanditon has spawned its own ardent fan base.
My goodness.
Hasn't it?
Amazing.
I'm going to finish today just by asking you, having obviously worked on this project as you have and completely immersed yourself in this story, do you think Cassandra did the right thing in burning the letters?
I do. Actually, I really do. And I think she did it out of loyalty and love, and that there were obviously, from her point of view, because what in researching Cassandra's story, in reading Gill's book, in sort of living with her in my head for 4 years, I think that Cassandra loved Jane beyond all measure, and she was the sister who, if you like, would pour oil on the waters, or because she wasn't the creative. I mean, she painted, but Jane was the creative, and creatives are mavericks, but they're also quite difficult sometimes to live with or to understand, because they go off on tangents, and 1 minute they're up because it's all going well, and the next minute, when they can't find the words or they're blocked, they're down in the doldrums. And Cassandra lived with that. And she also knew about Jane's capacity to wound as much as to praise in terms of her family members. So there will have been things in those letters, I have no doubt, that would have hurt her family, that would have been disloyal or waspish, or, Jane with her wry and witty sense of humour might have said something. And I think Cassandra just weighed it all up, and she thought, no, the novels exist. I will curate these final letters, and I will make a gift of them to my family and to my nieces and my nephews, and they can do with them what they will. But my sister's legacy is all important, because I didn't realise, but Jane actually asked for anonymity when she first started, when her books were first. I thought it was because she was a woman writing that she didn't get proper credit.
There were other writers of the time that were female writers that were writing. It wasn't the law. I mean, absolutely, it was.
And she didn't want. She wasn't seeking publicity. She was seeking. I think she was desperate for money at times, so she was hoping the books would sell. But I think she wasn't interested in fame or notoriety. It was all about the work.
Yes.
And I think that, from my point of view now, I think Cassandra decided that was how Jane should be remembered, through her books and through the letters that she chose to share. The stuff with Fanny is beautiful. The letters with Fanny are lovely, and they give a huge glimpse into Jane's personality. So I think she probably reasoned, that's enough. That's enough. The rest of it can go to the grave with us. And so, yes, I'm going to say yes, she did the right thing.
And I've always thought, because this is obviously, I mean, I have to say, it's a conversation that's come up many.
Oh, I'm sure, in your family, I'm sure.
And I have always thought that all accounts of Cassandra, Cassie, paint her as being a level-headed, sensible woman. And I trust her.
Yeah, I think you have to. I think that's enough.
I don't know. So she made decisions. I trust her. And I think how anybody sort of 4 generations later can try and have an opinion on it, to me, just seems just ludicrous. She was the closest, as I said, and she, if history painted her as somebody who made silly decisions, then I might have a different view, but it doesn't.
Yes, exactly. But she wasn't like that.
No.
The other thing I would say, which is very, this is coming at it from a slightly different angle. The decision, and she wouldn't have thought about that, obviously, because this was back in, when she did it in, was it 1840 that I can't remember? I'm not sure when she burnt them, but it was back.
Yes.
It was about that time. She would not have known or had any insight into where we are now in terms of social media, digital footprints, that everybody needs to know everything about everybody, or they can't cope. They need to know who's marrying who's having a relationship with who. Oh my God, have they had work done to their face? Oh. And actually it sort of diminishes the art and there is something about only having what we have about Jane that keeps this wonderful mystery and this
alive.
Intrigue alive.
Absolutely keeps it alive. And it's something that, because professionally, marketing, I've spent my career in marketing. And as actually when you look at, brands and what keeps, what your kind of ideal brands are and why they work and why there is something very much about Jane Austen and the fact that she's there, but she's just not quite there, is she? It's like,
yes,
grab her, but you just can't.
And
that mystery, and even that mystery over what she looked like. I mean, the fact that you don't know.
One image
isn't talking, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it keeps it going.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, it's. I think that's absolutely true. I think there's a kind of myth and mystery grown up around her, which I don't think is a bad thing.
No.
And Cassandra wouldn't have been thinking of that, obviously, because she wouldn't have. But what she would have been thinking about would have been Jane's reputation and the family reputation, because family was everything.
I also think that, when I think about it, I also think that everybody has a right to privacy. And
yes, exactly.
They might want to know what's in those letters, but tough. You can't.
Yeah, well, I think that's where she can come from.
Yes, and
private
absolutely had a right to privacy.
Yeah, and I think she just. She would have burnt a lot of her own letters as well. Her own inner thoughts that she was sharing with Jane, and all about her own tragedies and her own, all of that stuff. So no, nobody had a right to read that. So my answer to you is unequivocal. Yes, she did the right thing.
Excellent. I can't tell you what fun that's been, and really, really interesting. Really interesting.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
What's behind it? I thought it absolutely fascinating. I can't thank you enough.
Well, I hope your listeners watch it and enjoy it.
Absolutely. And as I said, it's actually releasing in the US on Sunday, May the 4th.
Sunday, May the 4th in the US, and then after that in various countries. Yeah. So hopefully it will come to Australia. But we're starting to pick up international sales and all that, so that's great. Yeah, we're delighted. We're absolutely thrilled with it, and thank you very much for asking me to do this. It's been a joy, and it was what a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. I hope that you enjoyed that discussion and that you enjoy Miss Austen when it comes out. I absolutely recommend you watch it. I enjoyed it very, very much. We will see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.